That's more like it. Hey, we're going to get started in just a second, but before we do, Mariana wanted me and Aurora to come up here and just very quickly welcome everybody to the Zinc Bar and to send out a resounding thank you back to the Zinc Bar and to the New York State Council on the Arts for funding the Lungful magazine, of which there are no examples here tonight, because they're totally sold out, because they're so popular. Aurora needs to just add something to that.
Hi.
But I also wanted to thank the passage of time. How about when I'm totally done thanking the passage of time, okay? The passage of time has made it possible for the Lungful Sunday night reading series to have extended itself almost into its third decade. Starting in 2013, my understanding is that the Zinc Bar series, or what ultimately became the Zinc Bar series, began in 1993 at the legendary Biblio's bookstore and cafe in Tribeca, a very different Tribeca in a very different New York, and has been run successfully, although the measure of success within poetry is somewhat elusive, every Sunday, taking the occasional summer off and a couple of holidays here and there. I want you to say two things when we're done, okay? Start thinking about the second thing. It was founded in 1993 by Joe Elliott and Marcella Durand, who were then joined by young Anselm Berrigan in A Prospect of Flowers, and has since been hosted by several other people. I joined it in '96 and took a couple of sabbaticals. And Douglas Rothschild hosted it for a long time, but it's been this, I would call it an illustrious, important series. If there was a measure by which we could judge what illustrious and important, it's not like petty theft or arson. It's very difficult to judge what success is in poetry, right, Aurora?
Hiya.
Exactly. So I just wanted to welcome everybody to the final reading of the 19th series, the 19th season of the Zinc Bar Sunday night readings, and hope that you will come back and join us for the beginning of the 20th season, which is technically, I guess, the third decade. So now I want to have Mariana come on up here. And Aurora will have the last word before the official portion of the reading actually gets underway. Does that sound like a good plan, Aurora? Hey, Aurora, what do you have to say?
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Mariana. Take it away.
Hi, Aurora. Aurora, you
dropped your thing. Yeah. Got your kerchief. Okay. Let's get out of here. Let the real thing happen.
Hi, everybody. Hi, welcome to Zinc Bar. Hi. Good evening. Thank you. Awesome. It's much better because you don't realize this, but there's this big glaring light, and so I can't see anybody's faces. So it's almost like I'm talking to myself in the room. So thanks everybody for coming tonight. I wanted to say two things. One is that there are books to be sold, or books to be purchased. Born and Raised by Chris Ross is selling for $15. Just came out. And sorry, Charles's collaboration with Arlo Quint, Check Out My Lifestyle, is selling for $7. It's a really beautiful book. So you should come purchase books at the intermission. So I am going to begin now. So this reading marks the end, as Brendan said, of the Zinc Bar reading series for 2012. And I have to say that I feel a particular nostalgia about tonight's reading. Chris Ross's book was just released, over here. All proceeds are going to Theo Katza-Ross, who's his son, and I thought he was coming, maybe he's coming later. So tonight, three friends of mine are reading: Charles Wolski and Chris Ross, whom I've known for the better part of the decade, and Joseph Phelan. These writers are cultural workers, taking narrative and turning it upside down, shaking out the pennies and the lint. Their work is approachable, and yet nubby, a little uncomfortable, a little scratchy. You get close to it, run your fingers over it. It's tangible. It purls and becomes exigent, and then it smooths out again, lays flat, and then offers a new opportunity to engage. As writers, we use bar stools, kitchen tables, and couches as pulpits. We spend hours telling stories to one another. We ask questions in order to elicit the stories of others, rigging it up in banter, allowing it to conflate into the bottom of a glass of whiskey. We perfect the art of narrative, sometimes obfuscated, sometimes we meander down a really dark road. Last night I was at a holiday party. There were nearly 60 adults at the party and almost as many children. It was wild, just say that. Imagine 45 1 to 7-year-olds totally drugged out on mass quantities of sugar. I'm really surprised of the people that are here that we left the party unscathed last night. And so last night we were standing out on the deck, and it was super cold, and Lucas, who's Greg Fuchs' son, was on the balcony with us, and he was running around in circles and playing with Transformer and acting wild. And he was wearing this black and red smoking jacket with these red jeans and this long blonde hair. I mean, I really, really want that outfit that he was wearing last night. And he looked up at us and he says, "I'm 5 1/12. The Velvet Underground is my favorite band." And he started singing lyrics from the song Heroin. And I feel just like Jesus' son, and I guess that I just don't know. I imagine that when Joseph Phelan was 5 1/12 years old, he was also singing the Velvet Underground. Or maybe he was the kind of boy that would rush into a crowd of dandelions with a sense of wonder and behold their cotton heads. I imagine that he was not content to leave the dandelions alone, but rather saw the moment as an opportunity to experiment with them. I have no doubt that he could not resist running his hand over the parachute of dandelions and release dandelion snow. At 5 1/12, whether or not Joseph Phelan was listening to the Velvet Underground or making it snow dandelions, he was no doubt beginning to assemble both his political and creative leanings. He is an observer. Maybe at 5 1/12, he was using all of his observational powers to create independent contours, turning them into story. Maybe he was developing characters, making costumes from treasures he found on the beach in Freeport. However it began, Joseph has been telling stories and experimenting with performance since he was a kid. When Joseph and I became friends, he had just started writing these short letters that reminded me of Joe Brainerd's collection of I Remember poems. Each day, I'd open up my email, and there would be 2 or 3 letters waiting for me. I think at first he sent them to me wondering how I might react to them. Would I find them offensive? Would I understand what he was trying to do with his work? Joseph takes what is unseen and then puts it on display. And he doesn't just leave it there. He isn't interested in making art that takes up space on his MacBook, never to see the light of day. He is more interested in experimentation, and his experiments definitely rely on a control group in order to succeed. Joseph has written a collection of love letters. These are not your traditional love letters. Many of these love letters are written about the city. Some are aimed at the sacred cows of hipsterdom. Some are the type of love letters you hope to receive, and others you hope never to receive. When I read Joseph's letters, I feel wrong. They're alluring and voyeuristic, and his letters are about the persona and remind us how narrative shapes our culture and our discourse. Joseph's letters initiated an ongoing conversation between us about writing as a performative act. It may have been late night over whiskey or a G-chat conversation about Hannah Arendt's book, Life of the Mind, or both. But what emerged from this series of conversations, among other things, was this: that writing is meaningless unless it is read by another, and that reading itself is a performative act. So I'm going to leave you with this parting thought. It's something that Joseph wrote to me in one of our correspondences over the past year. I am thinking that this is the point of art: to alter the sensory world and shift, temporarily or permanently, the experience of the world for those who engage it. Having this as an objective, really we can only set ourselves down the path and challenge ourselves artistically, and fail and challenge and fail again. But it is worthy, and it is where art and politics can collide, maybe. Please welcome Joseph Phelan.
So thank you. Can't see anything. So thanks for coming out. It's a terrible night out there, and I'm very excited to see Chris and Charles read next. I'm very thankful that everyone's come out tonight. Everyone I've written a letter to is here tonight, so just see me at the bar afterwards to collect your letter, and I don't have to pay for the stamp. This is all love letters. To my 18-year-old self, that tattoo design looks so good on the wall of the tattoo shop, of the angel peering into the reflection pool and seeing a mirror image of a demon. That's a nice cover art for a soft metal band from the late 80s. It is not something you should ever consider getting tattooed as a tramp stamp on you. Ever. But some things you have to learn the hard way. Good luck. To the woman I saw on the train on the way home from a work meeting, I thought you liked me. You stared so hard, like you were memorizing my body under my red gingham shirt. Like you could see all my imperfections separately, a kaleidoscope of failures. Like you were mining me for soul, or heart, or diamonds, or something else I can't afford. And when I sat next to you at J Street, you leaned into me, your mouth close to my ear. Everyone else in the car fell away. And it was just us on the train. And you breathed, "You know you have a name tag on, right?" I melted. Getting a little emotional. To the woman standing behind me at Stumptown Coffee. Girl, I know your life is so very interesting, and I know you are so excited to see your friends in line, so now you don't have to wait for your coffee like the rest of us. But, and I mean this in the most nicest possible way, your voice is like a squawking parrot. It cuts through my headphones, and I'm trying to listen to Terry Gross talk about Woody Guthrie. And I'm trying to figure out why she's talking about the dude, because he's been dead. So please, shut the fuck up. XO, Joseph. To the woman on the West Fort subway platform. You don't know why I cried. It was 3 a.m. and the train wouldn't come, and there were rats on the track. It was you and me on the heavy wooden bench, balancing out the ends like a playground seesaw. The sharp-edged floral of your perfume cut the smell of piss and sweat. Your knees below the hem of your black dress glowed like marble. The tick of your heartbeat tickled the pearls around your neck. You looked like you should be hailing a cab. You glanced at me out of the side of your eyes. My tears tasted like whiskey and snot. You clutched your purse closer, the swoop of your neck like a palm in the steady breeze. When the train came, you stood, turned your head, looked me full in the face, and said, "Hold on, dear, just hold on a little bit longer." The doors swallowed you and the train swept you through the tunnel. So I clung to the bench, willing it to bring me to the shore of morning. Thank you. To the girl who bit me on the shoulder at an after-hours party as a pickup line. Your straight-across bangs remind me of Julianne Moore in The Big Lebowski, but not in Magnolias. I liked her in both. That pharmacy monologue in Magnolias was really good. I can see you suspended from pulleys splattering paint on a giant canvas, but not fucking up Fat Jeff Bridges. If you grow out your bangs, you won't remind me of anyone, though. Keep them, you're almost famous. Remember me, Joseph. To the Ace Hotel, New York. Dear, you are so hip right now. But what will you do when exposed metal pipes and vintage fixtures and heavy furniture and dim lighting goes out of style? Is this just a phase? Will you change to keep bringing in the hip kids with their laptops working at your long tables in the lobby, even though they can't afford to stay there? Will you change to bring in the rich people with their dirty, edgy designer clothing, those who can't afford your rooms? Will you change? Just, my friend, stay true to yourself no matter what you do. Stay true. Joseph. To the lady with the short, stylish haircut and the outfit from Strawberries. You sit in front of me at the airport security line with one pocketbook and nothing else. You handed the TSA guy only your ticket. Then your ticket and your ID in the wallet. Then your ticket and your ID outside the wallet. And then you took forever to take your shoes off. But your knees set off the metal detector anyway, because of the metal in them. I took my belt off in the cab, put my phone in my bag on the escalator, and had all of my lotions and creams in a handy plastic bag since last night. Your ignorance of how to navigate simple situations reminded me that I am smarter than most people, and I must be patient with them. Bless your tiny, confused heart. I love her. To the boy with the beard. Shaved head, low-cut neon tank. Tight jeans, ankle boots, and gold chains catching on the forest of your chest hair. A gay Viking, working the door at the stud, smoke dripping from your mouth. We were supposed to make out. It was planned. It was anticipated. I wanted it, but you didn't get enough to hold on to. You did not woo, or tease, or insult. When we kissed through the metal bars at closing, you weren't close enough. Next time. To the girl, with the arms that taste like the ocean, and your mouth that tastes like my childhood crush when we played doctor in her attic. I know I said I'd forget what you told me last night, when we were soaked in whiskey and tossed about the dark of my room like sailors lost at sea on a cloudy night. But I lied. I remember all of it. Sorry, Joseph. To the flight attendant I fucked because of your red Union lanyard and beaded rainbow bracelet. Thank you for offering me extra cookies and whatever else I wanted after I asked about the Union and wished you good luck. It was fun, but shaved chests, plucked eyebrows, and oversized sunglasses just aren't my thing. I would love to go to a rally with you again. But no more fucking in McDonald's bathrooms on the way home. It's just gross. Love you, Joseph. To the boy I stood so close to on the subway. If you turned your head, we would have kissed. But it wasn't your backwards hat and that thick, straight black hair beneath the bill, or your wide-set eyes and the golden skin that made me think of a kiss instead of a punch or a pinch or a headbutt. It was your t-shirt. It smelled like laundry detergent, like Mountain Fresh laundry detergent. The one with ads of impossibly white people doing impossibly white things, like hanging up laundry in the fluttering sun, while puppies nip at their boat-shoot heels, even though we all know that those white people pay someone who looks like your mom to do the laundry. But I smelled it, so I let the train's turn sway me closer. Our chests almost touched. It was okay because it was crowded. I let my head hang on my neck, and I sniffed your shoulder quietly. You smelled so good, like Mountain Fresh laundry detergent. The train stopped, and you were gone, pushed out the doors in a crush of people, and all I had left was the memory of impossibly white people. I miss you, Joseph. To the woman with the curly hair like bracelets for babies, and a smile that could start a riot. When I told you I had a date with someone who was going to leave me black and blue and sore for days, you smiled quick and flirted anyway. Then you came over for ginger soup, sitting on my couch with whiffs of work clinging to your shirt like campfire smoke, but less romantic. More awkward. I thought I left it on the playground like the time I played house but asked to be the wife. Somehow, our digital flirting pounded out on keyboards and sent through text has turned to pauses and jolted passes. I want our first night back so I could kiss you before it got too late. Love you, Joseph. To the girl who picked me up at the party. We walked the Brooklyn Bridge instead of making out that night. Your brown ringlets brushed your shoulders. I turned my cheek as you tried to kiss me before you got into the cab. We've kissed a few times now. I said I wanted to stop because I need space. What I didn't tell you was that I also want to stop because you don't open your mouth when you kiss. And you open it too much when you talk. You wanted me to be direct. Can we still be friends? Joseph. I think she just left. To the girl in the sleeveless mauve blouse in the subway. I wanted to lean over and wipe the sweat from my forehead on your shoulder. I would lick the salt and grit from your neck. It would cake my tongue like too many cigarettes. I would take you from the city and set you free in the steep hills of Harriman Park on a broiling Sunday afternoon where the black bears roam from campsite to campsite looking for leftovers. I would lay you on your back on a rock cliff after sunset before we light the fire and promise you the stars and count them all with you. I would take you to a rooftop in this dripping city, soaked in wine and sunshine, and laugh too loud. I would push your brown hair behind your ear, tell you summer has just begun. It only gets better. But then I saw you were reading The Count of Monte Cristo on your iPhone. It should have been a brittle yellowed paperback from the dollar rack outside the Strand bookstore. Right then, I wanted nothing more to do with you than to get off the train and leave you in the heat. Goodbye, Joseph. To the revolutionaries who make a living at it in the United States. We are a results-driven company. You're fired. That's for you guys. I have two more here. To my best friend. If you forget to pay me back for the beers and dinner and the cab, I will buy you a kitten. Months from now, when you are finally sleeping through the night and not scrubbing piss from your comforter, when you are happy to come home to its purring, furry face, when you finally love it, I will steal into your house in the middle of the night and punch you in the face. Joseph. This last letter is for two of the most important people here tonight. I'm very excited to be here sharing the stage with them. To my unborn children, if you're reading this, I'm already dead. Read on carefully. When I was a kid, I brought a bazooka to a knife fight. Sure, we had agreed on switchblades and no friends. This wasn't a bad video or Smooth Criminal. This was real life. When I took a shower that night, the drain clogged with brain tissue, and the water pooled at my ankles like a rising red tide. The tub was sandy with bits of skull and teeth. I won. Overwhelmingly. No matter what the police have told you, the people who killed me are Charles Wolski and Chris Ross, the writers. These are jealous men. Jealous of my craft and fame. Jealousy in a writer is like rabies in a raccoon. You know what they do to raccoons. Bazookas. Love forever, Joseph. Thank you very much. The dishes are done.
That was great. Thanks, Joseph. Did Ciara come in?
Hey.
Woohoo!
Hey.
Yay! All right. So I was supposed to dedicate this reading at the beginning, and I'm going to do it now, a little bit late, to Laura and John and all the tenderoni bitches. All right. So funny. All right. Before I ever met Chris, I knew him as the long-lost love of Jay's life. They have a really sweet love story. You should ask them to tell it to you if you have a chance over whiskey later. I remember sitting in a small cafe on West 4th Street, eating pumpkin pancakes and drinking coffee, while Jay told me the long story of their relationship and how they'd found one another again after nearly 7 years. Chris Ross is the brother I've always wanted. If we had met when we were 5 and 1/12 years old, he would have pushed me down in the playground, and I would have bit him with my baby teeth. We would have become best friends, brothers in arms. Our stories are similar, both raised by our moms, writers, growing up working class, though he grew up in Indiana and I grew up in California. Whenever we're together, Chris and I bro down. Usually it's through banter. We tell each other lies, or we create a collective story that is built upon one lie after another until we've said something so absurd that we have to start it all over again. Last night at the party, Chris came up to me and gave me a hug, and then he looked at me and asked if he could get me a drink. He followed that up by asking me what I wanted, and then he paused, glanced at me, and without saying a word, he said, "You'll have a bourbon." And I smiled because that is exactly what I wanted. Chris Ross knows what you want, and he wants to make sure you get it. Chris writes coming-of-age stories. That's not to say that this is the genre in which he writes, but that his characters, whether they are 15 or 35, are always coming into themselves. Chris writes stories from the sidelines. The work sneaks up on you. At first, you aren't sure exactly what you have in front of you. It's like when you notice that your sweater has begun to unravel. You notice the string, how it's been unraveling all day long, maybe even for a week, probably longer. That's what it's like to read one of Chris's stories, a long, slow unravel, and when you finally realize what's happening, you know that it's nothing short of brilliant. Chris strikes each emotional note perfectly. Each word is deliberate, each line, each period carefully chosen, mulled over, executed with a fine control. Chris writes the kind of stories you want to read over and over again, and after you read his work, you think to yourself, damn, I want to write like that. Last night at the party, before children started melting down, Chris looked at me and said, "You know, we've never gotten past the second cup of coffee." And I was surprised to hear him say that. And he said, "Maybe tomorrow night, after the reading, we'll have a whiskey, and I'll hear what lingers beyond that second cup." Please welcome Chris Ross.
I felt incriminating. Thank you everybody for coming out and being here to hear this. Being here. And thanks Mariana for inviting me to read along with these guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. The story in two parts. This is part one, whatever. It's called Cutting Keys. Pam wakes up fidgety, distant. Ivers, thinking all she needs is to get out of the house, treats her to Bob Evans. Pam insists on taking the Saturn. Opening the menu, she decides she's not hungry. Ivers gets her to take a few bites of his border scramble. Back in the Saturn, Pam cuts across Decker to a rental property on Bussern Street. The house is small, quiet, single story. On the porch sits the dome top of a portable grill fixed in the snow. Pam takes a ring of keys from her glove compartment, says the tenant, Lydia French, is 2 months behind in rent. Pam says, "Come up there with me." "Why? This is your thing," Ivers says. "But it isn't, though," she says. "Come on." The tenant is home. Like the rental property, Lydia French is small, quiet, and apparently single. Ivers is surprised by the way Pam puts it to her. "You got the rent for us, or what?" Lydia explains her situation, how she's depleted her savings, that she just got on over at Duke Energy, and all she needs is a few paychecks to catch up. Pam tugs on Ivers as she enters the house. Ivers follows, thinking she needs him to look under the sink or check the boiler, but Pam wants him to help her dismantle Lydia's Dell computer and carry it out to the Saturn. As if this kind of thing has happened before, Lydia French isn't saying a word. Ivers refuses, tells Pam he'll be outside. On the drive back to Pam's house, Ivers explains that he understands the tenant should pay their rent and pay it on time, and that you can't expect to stop paying your rent and not suffer the consequences. "You'd be surprised," Pam says. "But what kind of landlord barges into someone's home and takes their computer hostage? That's just bad business, Pam." Pam tells Ivers, "Let me tell you what I think a bricklayer can do with his idea of business, good, bad, or otherwise." Ivers gets home to his trailer on South Decker Road. He tries to sleep but can't. He takes a shower. He takes a shit. He scrounges around the kitchen, finds a bump of crank, drains a Michelob. Nothing works. He throws his cat Andy into the truck and makes a run to 76 for a newspaper and a Red Bull. There's an ad in the classifieds for a number of management positions at Wabash Plastic, $26,000 a year with benefits. Fuck it. Ivers calls the number, gives a description of himself, bricklayer, iron worker, some drywall, and secures an interview for the next day. Amazed that things might have suddenly changed for the better, he gets out the suit he'd worn to his father's funeral for the interview. In the breast pocket is the invoice for the headstone. Lardner Monuments, Terre Haute, Indiana. Paid in full. Ivers pins the invoice under his Union 103 magnet on the fridge. Andy's food and water bowls get a good scrubbing before they're filled for the night. The interview takes place in an office on the second floor of First National Bank, a small room with empty yellow walls and a man at a desk sipping from a World's Best Dad coffee cup. Ivers is asked the usual questions: education, experience, convicted of a felony in the last 10 years? No? Good. A manila folder is pulled from a drawer. Ivers is instructed to consider what he's about to hear and if what he hears doesn't sound like him or not. Candidate must be open to direction and collaborative work style and commitment to get the job done. Candidate must have the ability to look at situations from several points of view. Candidate must be persuasive with details and facts. Candidate must delegate responsibilities effectively. Candidate must have a sense of humor. Candidate is required to undergo 11 weeks of intensive life training. This mandatory training will cost the candidate approximately $630. Like a highway worker armed with an orange flag, Ivers puts up a hand for the World's Best Dad to slow down. Stop. The interview is over. Ivers wakes up in an icy trailer. This has happened before, the gas company placing a lock on his meter to deny him service. But this morning when he goes out with a hammer and wrench to bust the lock, he finds that the entire meter is gone. A school day, some kids are filing past in the cold on their way to the bus. One of them is the boy Ivers had some trouble with a couple weeks back when he came across him frightening some cows with fireworks. Testing the waters between them, the boy offers a little wave hello. Ivers waves back with a casual swing of his hammer. It's going to take some time to figure out how to heat the trailer again, so Ivers starts getting the wood-burning stove in his garage going, considering this is where he and Andy will be sleeping from now on. He pulls the cat out from under the bed, throws him in the garage. He grabs his chainsaw, works through the wood pile. Somewhere between thinking about the last 4 weeks with Pam and burying his father, Ivers comes up with the idea of what to do next. Bless you. With shovel and pickaxe, the next 6 hours are spent unearthing the service line from his trailer to the road. Ivers invites the full day of work. There's no fear of spiking the line as the sweat pours down, no call for concern that he could potentially blow 1/5 of Decker off the map. When he calls up the gas company and tells them what he's done, the agent asks him if he smells gas. Ivor's answer is this before he hangs up. "These pipes of yours are trespassing on my property, so come and get them before I press charges." The police arrive. Yellow tape goes up. Traffic is waved on. Kids making their way back from school are directed to take another route home. A service truck from the gas company swerves into the driveway. Ivers is watching all this go down in a fog of Michelob and physical exhaustion. He hits another bump of crank to clear his head, scoops up Andy from the seat of his riding mower. Out in the cold, the man from the gas company informs Ivers that a property owner is to give any and all utility companies at least 48 hours notice prior to any kind of excavation. "You really should know better, sir. You could have put a number of lives in danger." Ivers reminds him it's February, the coldest month of the year. "What about my life, or the life of Andy here? We could have frozen to death." The police, now that they've been notified there's no gas leak, give Ivers a citation for working without a building permit. Ivers says to the back of the cop's head, "But I'm not building anything." Ivers drinks himself to sleep, wakes up on a cot he pulled from the rafters of his garage at some point in the night. He feeds the fire, checks Andy's food and water. In town, he has breakfast at Denny's, spinning cup after cup of coffee thinking about Pam. When the bill arrives, he can hardly focus on the amount he's so strung out on caffeine. He drinks a Michelob for balance.
Louder.
Roaming the aisles of a hardware store. Roaming the aisles of a hardware store in the hopes of generating an idea on how to heat his trailer again, Ivers comes across an old man in a bubble coat and pajama bottoms. He's just sitting there on an overturned bucket banked by seed and fertilizer. "Help you with anything?" the old man says. Ivers says, "I don't think so." The old man says, "Need a key made?" Knowing what it feels like to just want to do something, anything with your hands, Ivers has the old man make him duplicates to his garage and trailer. It is a good sound, the cutting of keys, comparable to the smell of burning leaves or the sight of kids in line for the high dive at the city pool. The old man's hands tremble as the new keys are pulled from the machine that cut them. 2 a.m. Just as Ivers expected, Lydia French's Dell computer is still being held hostage in Pam's Saturn. He peels back the driver's side window, wedges his wallet into the opening, and uses a straightened hanger to get at the door latch. It opens with no alarm. Grabbing his wallet, he stops to wonder just what in the hell it is he thinks he's trying to prove when the headlights begin flashing, the horn going off. Ivers grabs the computer, starts running. He loses the keyboard, trips over it, his body dropping to the pavement, landing on the hard drive. For a second he thinks he's been shot, but it's just that the wind's been knocked out of him. He collects himself, gathers up the separate pieces of computer around him, and gets himself into his truck. Driving away, a black cat crosses his path. "Well, that's no good," Ivers says, and pauses at a yellow light to hit another bump of crank. The crank helps. By the time he's back in his garage and settling down on his cot with a Jack and Coke in front of the fire, Ivers has convinced himself that it's man that created superstitions, not animals. You can't blame the animals for anything. The plant dream. Ivers comes home from grabbing a coffee at 76 to his father's Thunderbird backed into the driveway. The Thunderbird was the only car his father had ever bought new, and his father kept it that way for years until the night he had a massive stroke behind the wheel, pitching the car into an icy ditch and sending himself through the windshield. Ivers removes the lid from his coffee, takes in the new grill, the new windshield. The only evidence remaining of what had happened is the fact that the car is empty. The back door to the trailer opens, and Ivers' little brother Stacy walks out, eating from a pint of chocolate ice cream. Stacy is 26 years old, works at the Home Depot in Terre Haute, and still a head case for the girl he lost his virginity to, the Valerie Stump. The last time I ever saw Valerie Stump was the morning of the showing. She was wrapped in a blanket on the couch watching The Perfect Storm. As the ocean swallowed the modest fishing boat and its remaining crew, she mused to herself, "It's just beautiful, isn't it?" Using his spoon as a pointer, Stacy explains, You can't really tell, but the grill and hood are from different years. I was able to replace the Pioneer with the original factory stereo, though." Ivers says, "Why would you do that? The Pioneer wasn't affected by the accident." This is what Ivers calls it, the accident. "For its resale value, of course," Stacy says, adjusting the scarf around his neck. "There are a lot of purists out there." Ivers nods in agreement, though he knows he'll never let Stacy sell that Thunderbird. "Good thinking, little brother," he says, and the men attempt to hug through their layers of Carhartt and flannel. Stacy hands over the keys. "How about taking us out to lunch?" Ivers takes the keys, but says they'll take his truck instead. He clears out the passenger side, moving the hard drive and monitor to the floor, wedging the keyboard behind the seat. He looks over to Stacy, surveying the space between the trailer and the garage, Ivers' own no man's land of utility buckets, tires, mounds of sand, gravel, Freon canisters, etc. "Here," Ivers says, growing impatient, and tosses the spoon and empty pint into the closest bucket. A second pitcher of Michelob is brought to their booth at Applebee's. Stacy has gone on about the politics within the garden center of Home Depot, has bragged about the time he checked out Larry Bird's wife buying teak oil one day. He's gone over the details of getting the Thunderbird fixed again. Now it's time to talk about Mom. "She's always calling and getting on me about taking her out to the movies and shit, and I tell her, 'Mom, I'm doing what I can here.' She asks about you. She wants to know when you're coming back for good. And I tell her, 'Mom, he left Terre Haute when he was 17. I don't think he's coming back.'" Ivers asks, "How's Stump?" Stacy says, "Didn't you get my voicemail?" Ivers prepares himself for being told how he never calls back. "I did get your voicemail. Sorry. You two are still kaput then?" Stacy wipes a hand between his scarf and neck, pauses to inspect the moisture on his hand before going for a napkin. "The truth? If she called me right now, I would take her back. I would. And I know I'm an asshole for saying that, but I mean, what's wrong with me?" Ivers pours more Michelob. "There's nothing wrong with you, Stacy." Stacy says, "I had a dream the other night that a plant was growing from my left wrist. I looked up what it means. I googled plant dream. There was this site that said I'm either maturing emotionally or turning into a vegetable." Fajitas arrive. Between bites, Ivers watches his little brother stare out to the snow falling. Since puberty, Stacy's had a problem with back hair. By the time he was 20, he was forced to get laser surgery for it. Valerie Stump still made fun of him, though. Started calling him bareback instead of bareback. Ivers wishes he knew what to tell him now that he's free of her. But being firstborn is like being vice president. It's a position that doesn't really mean much until a higher up dies. Then people start looking at you like you know the nuclear codes. Inspiration hits as Ivers stands in line at the liquor store. He pulls the bottles from their paper sack and sketches out a way he could fit the wood-burning stove in his garage into his kitchen. He shows the sketch to Stacy. Stacy likes it, says let's do it. They make a stop at the hardware store, then to a scrapyard. Back on South Decker Road, Jack and Cokes are poured. The kitchen is cleared out so Stacy can hammer together a platform while Ivers weakens the spot in the wall where the flue will fit. Another round of Jack and Cokes and Ivers gets out his chainsaw. Carvers out the hole for the flue. Stacy's impressed. "You're a real artist, big brother." Ivers feels good about the hole, too. "That's what I'm talking about," he says. The task of moving the stove from the garage and into the kitchen stalls mid-driveway, so they make a run back into town for some Burger King. Warnings of a blizzard are reported over the radio. When they get back to the trailer, Ivers digs out a tarp from his no man's land and secures it over the Thunderbird. By midnight, they've managed to get the stove across the rest of the driveway and mounted to its platform in the kitchen. A fire is lit. The seal on the flue holds. The brothers stand and drink and talk about their work, and soon the trailer is warm enough that they can remove their coats. A window is opened. Stacy strips down to his t-shirt, leaving his scarf on. "It's starting to feel like Okefenokee in here now," he says. Another window is opened. Eventually they retreat to the garage. Stacy takes it hard. "God damn it, where'd we go wrong? We did everything right? I mean, didn't we?" Ivers wants to break out the crank, but decides against it. He sits on his riding mower, thinking it through. When he sees Andy looking for his water bowl, he realizes what he's forgotten to do. He returns to the kitchen, fills up pails of water, sets them on top of the stove. 20 minutes later, the trail is habitable again. In the morning, Ivers climbs out of his first night's sleep in his own bed in almost 3 weeks. Stacy is passed out on the cot in front of the stove. With his scarf on the floor, Ivers can see a claw of hair rising up the back of his neck. Laser surgery wasn't forever after all. Ivers pulls the blanket to his little brother's ears. Instead of water, Ivers decides to replenish the pails on the stove with snow. Shouldering the back door open, he wades through a knee-high drift to his garage. He grabs a shovel and starts filling the pails. Stacy pokes his head out. "Shit," he says, "they weren't kidding about that blizzard." He ducks inside, comes back out in his coat and scarf. He jumps into the drift, starts kicking around the driveway. Ivers waits, then throws him another shovel. Stacy begins digging a sort of moat around the Thunderbird. Ivers says, "Just leave it." Stacy said, "Leave it? How are we supposed to sell it if nobody can see it?" Ivers decides to get it over with. "Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen." Stacy says, "Why not? Dad would have wanted us to." Ivers says, "What makes you say that?" Stacy says, "Because of the way he took care of it, for the resale value." "Dad took care of it because he loved it," Ivers says. Stacy says, "Says you. I got debts. We're selling this thing." Ivers says, "Stace, I love you, but fuck you. We're not selling Dad's car." Stacy returns to shoveling out his moat. Ivers goes inside, sets the pails on the stove. He folds the cot, sets it against the fridge, takes some Advil. Watching the snow melting on his stove, he wonders if he shouldn't just let Stacy sell the car anyway. At the very least, the Thunderbird would bring in $9,000, more than enough to get Valerie's stump back. And once she's back, maybe she'll stick around for good. It's a shitty plan any way you look at it, but Ivers knows it's the only plan Stacy's got. He closes his eyes, tries to imagine a family, house payments, school plays, camping along the Appalachian Trail. Before heading back outside, Ivers looks around for a scarf of his own. All done.
So there are more of Chris Ross's books. We just need to put them up on the podium. But there are many more. So we'll put them on the podium when the reading is over. Charles Wolski. Okay. I blame my love of poetry on my AP English teacher. I did not love Judy Wenrick. She replaced a teacher I loved, who would walk into the classroom and perform scenes from the Scarlet Letter. She encouraged intellectual dissent, and she was completely fabulous. Looking back on it, I probably had a crush on her. So when she left and was replaced by dour, hippie, Teva-clad Mrs. Wenrick, I had to fight just to stay awake in class. We spent nearly 2 months reading and analyzing the Scarlet Letter. Toward the end of the first semester, as we neared the winter break, she taught us a small unit on poetry, and we read poems by Marianne Moore. And that is when I first fell in love with poetry. Marianne Moore loved sports and lived in Brooklyn, and lived in Fort Greene, where I lived many, many years later, and wrote this poem called Baseball and Writing, and we studied that poem for 2 weeks. Here's a quote from that poem. "They have that killer instinct, yet Elston, whose catching arm has hurt them all with the bat, when questioned says unenviously, 'I'm very satisfied we won.'" When I heard Charles read at the Poetry Project 2 weeks ago, I was reminded of Marianne Moore, her brilliance, and why I love poetry. I've known Charles Wolski as long as I've known anyone in New York City. For nearly 13 years, I've gone to readings, spent birthdays, and countless nights with him, talking and drinking into the dawn. At a reading, Charles is often the person I seek out when I need a touchstone or a giant hug. Charles is a truth teller. Last year, during a reading, I read a section from a long poem I'd been working on, and afterward, Charles gave me some feedback. Direct, loving, thoughtful. He said I needed to be funnier. Too much gravitas in my poems. He said he understood because he had struggled with that in his own work at other times. I had the privilege of hearing Charles read at the Poetry Project for the first time after nearly 13 years of friendship, and I was blown away. Charles writes poems that are intimate, in that they invite you into the lines. They keep you held and allow you to meander, jumping from one line to the next, uncovering some unearthly magic. Charles is a unicorn. I like unicorns. They're mystical creatures who possess healing properties, and Charles' poems are healing. They are the best mix of New York School meets postmodern without a lot of self-important jargon. His recent chapbook, a collaboration with Arlo Quint, Check Out My Lifestyle, provides the healing magic of unicorns. And when I find myself straying from poetry, when I'm annoyed by characters and the scene, it's poets like Charles that bring me back and remind me how so long ago I fell in love with Marianne Moore, poetry, and unicorns. Please welcome Charles Wolski.
Thank you, Mel. So Chris is out of books, but I have this advance copy I got a few years ago from him. I'll put that up here for sale. It's, but it's $50. I was talking about nerves when I read a couple weeks ago, and about how there's not like warm-up lines like basketball or something like that. So I'm going to read a poem really quick that's like a warm-up poem from me. It's like my layup line. And it's from Check Out My Lifestyle, which is right here. If you get a chance, you could check out my lifestyle, man. It's awesome. I think. All right, here we go. Competition for attention. Silver buttons, gold, medallion, weird hat. Reinventing the mule in the house of Burgesses. Charming in the sound, neither sell, deny, delay. Yesterday's avant reason, today's excuse for abuse. Melted down bus depot a la Recherche du Temps. Turned into bullets in Texas, malt liquor. Nothing tells memories from ordinary moments, only afterwards do they claim remembrance on account of their scars. This man was selected only because he was glued to an image in the past, creating a situation engaged in the same obscure attitude. Puffy sunglasses. It's always a weird scenario. I love sitting when I read. It's kind of like being an 80s comedian or something like that. You know? This poem's called Slip By, or maybe Pass By. I haven't decided. Jersey skyline, nary a glance, flirt, confusing sincerity and parody. Bridge and tunnel typecast hillbilly permissiveness. Yet to waste my lifeline in Bayonne is just me being sincere about matters? Everything exploding, Youngstown tune-up, family roadblocks set between 56 and 60. Cartel ghostly evermore whistles past graveyard of unused notebook lines. Just archival dread and dust doesn't read fragments. Writ dampener, sweater knitted lungs, dust panning asbestos. 1998 gnaws at marrow jack-o'-lantern carved heart. In the belly of beast, a type of access, I sometimes relate to 147 Essex Street, the boyhood home of Jack Kirby, superhero strength of amnesia, pathology clogging up arterial flow of the great unraveling, contentious seclusion in the first person until the Xanax wears off. Home paved over mind is a parking lot loaded with Smurfs. Parallel event death ray flies like a dove, can't knock the hustle, a boombox from above. It's listless. So, tell whoever I said it was okay. Null-form futures by ambiguous deluxe apartments in the sky. Homeland always within walking distance. Sneaking through Poland, raising me here, Ellis Island adds a ski to confused ancestry, sewn into lining of peasant coat myth. Carry the crown everyone wears, the prince's slippers when it's tarnished, but leave some room for just being here. This somebody tied onto a rusty key, exactly wanting to say, but let pass sounds of what instead? Mumblecore? Oh, bald skull Yorick, Penelope for Odysseus, reweaving the hairpiece for an auspicious return. All right, so I wrote this poem this week, which is always a interesting situation. Because I'm usually used to showing my friends that are poets my poems way in advance, and then they cut them up and dice them. This poem is called Kazam, and it's Kazam was this movie that this guy Shaquille O'Neal was in. And I watched it. I was helping my mother this week pack up and move to a new apartment, which basically just consisted of me just sitting around and telling her, no, do that, do this, do that. So I wrote this poem, actually on my iPhone. I should probably read it from the iPhone, but I won't. And I wrote a lot of it taking the train back and forth from Philly to here. That's where she is now. This is called Kazam. It's all over the place, so dig it, man. Shack lozenge in the night, pathology the etherized plantation, method the installment plan, a randomized controlled cheap holiday and other people's misery. They say remember, but it is often not good advice. Warming up on the teleprompter, though you knew that because he tweets about it endlessly. Deliver the new way of being lonely, fed through an 8-bit processor, hiding in the light. An undiscovered country occurred roughly between 1095 and 1291 AD, about to become inelegant. Any superhero could live in a junkyard, Shaquille's laser-like eyes on the prize, but doubling down on the stereotypes, a genie costume worn throughout his debut film. To mollify, not incite, but change your mood. Speak your piece, then, it's the breaks. Ill parasite of dysfunction, a dismal demagogic, embracing the utility of others' expectations up on you. Ultra-loose policy cycle maxing out nerves to make some point about poverty, but Dante with usurers in the seventh circle. Right on Dante, by the way. Dubious reclamation in Bon Jovi-Springsteen duo in front of supersized images of destroyed New Jersey home is actually repping more than one set. Wacko self-right children of the corn syrup. What's a good story but images plugged into an electric blanket? Arthur C. Danto in the 1980s. Stranger to all but collection, going on tilt. Going on drop. Stranger to all but collection, going on tilt means chasing losses, vacuosity, heavy manufacturing concerns, churning, as it now stands, place date time to face the karaoke. This is prosaic level. Burnt out era drying out, intimate huge for slabs cleaved away. Trailing near the safety bite, away from numbers, inside sense reassured, no one worse for it. Amorphous. Preserve vile thoughtful curation, gilded neat drinks tucking in awareness, another version in the new release section with stacks of long remaindered go-nows blocking the aisle to the exit. One above all templates. Milieu bleeding lifelike commodity insecure, champ's prosecutorial pause. Ambiguity. Feedback come together immoral die woken vision. Deep secondary low crisis transformative opening night vendor, selling sincere supporter retro version. No longer submitting a bio gone straight to VHS, trapped in now defunct rental video store. City on the Edge of Forever is episode 28. Recognized percentage rolling with normalized arrogance. Full-on catastrophe. Believes in Darwin but strums air guitar onwardly. Just trying to think of how I'll read them. Foul. That's with a W. Newest urbanity, soft bigotry promotes low expectations. Straight jacket and messenger bag, no room for the spare tire. Leaves with this drift we are in, recedes by day, remotely hopeful yet identically serious. Tones on phone to borrow more time. Status expectancy, Santa Rosa crawls out, self-generates, weird suckers should. Scratchity tickets, weekday overflow, extra work yet buoyancy. Freelance check is late again. Scarlet letter type of employancy. Comforts afflicted, gray areas brightened. Afflicts comfortable when arriving to bar wearing neon Nikes. Richie Rich to your Vaughn. Spirit rails the reasoned revolutionary. Mises slapped by the invisible hand that steals the bicycle seat. What time does the fight start? What time do you want it to? I guess that's for Joe, right? Slick hands in the pickled mason jar. Secretly eats Monsanto. It's a weird combative world. Title all of it normal carpet ride. Whole lines of being clatter and clank, but most of that was jacked anyways. Mediated souls, freshly powerful, unpacked suitcases. We'll still manage, though, sneaking back in through their gift shop. Oh man, this is a basketball poem. It keeps changing titles and content, but now I'm calling it Petro in the Rafters. Petro being this, there's this basketball player for the New Jersey Nets, now Brooklyn Nets, named Drazen Petrovic, who was like this amazing basketball player that died in the Autobahn, like at the height of his career. Was someone that Michael Jordan once said was the only person he'd ever pay to see play. So it's Petro in the Rafters. There's just tons of basketball references. You'll love it if you love basketball. Bootleg Air Jordan taking off mask. Sudden prominent promotion disassembling against our aging Zorroic memory. Brooklyn Renaissance, royal oligarch, real estate mogul meeting present with crown jewels of New Jersey swamp. Brian Scalabrine at the scorer's table sometime soon. Listen, you thought the windmill dunk was built in just 6 days? It took much longer than Derek Coleman's one good season. In Portland, it ditched that strategy long time ago. Four corners that run the clock out on hologram of Drazen Petrovic's fists raised in the shape of a V, now on sale. What saves us from the bracket creep, picking the 8th seed to go deep without a winning record? It draws the weak side help that creates opportunities all across the court. Greg Oden versus Sam Bowie afternoon action special with a side of Bill Walton left to the cultural dial. Beyond promise of Walt Frazier dressing you up for Gala Randall Market, move all decimal places to the right, including textbook jumper from the foul line. Gentle crossover. Taking away One Direction, sleep potion pick and roll. Kobe just shrugs that one. Slicking the floors, cross river ghost of Patrick Ewing. Shrugs the other one off. It's too much payroll. Leverage is what sags us in the middle, packed into a zone D. When they run high screens for the man selling you the Brooklyn Bridge, it's time for the $2 jitney ride back up Flatbush to Lefferts Gardens. Jerome from Manhattan now has the line. That which prices the family out of the hood shouts out to the arena in order to save them. Alright, so I'm going to read a stack of poems from this collaboration, somewhat dubiously titled Check Out My Lifestyle. It's with, I did it with this dude, Arlo, and he's not here, he's in Atlanta. I think he's in Atlanta, or he's making excuses, either way. What? Alright. These are all really short. I guess I should talk a little about the collaboration. About a year and a half ago, originally, I gave him this like massive notebook filled with lines. Like, when I go throughout the day, I just fill a notebook with lines when they come to my head, and I gave them to him, and then he basically read through them and then just like tossed them on a bookshelf. And he did go back to some of the lines, but then from there he started creating poems with me that were just based on like texts I may have made to him at like 3 in the morning, or strange conversations we had that I forgot about, etc. But I like this chapbook, it's good. We plan to do more work together. Hopefully prose though, so it's a little more up my alley. Secret language of ascots. Long-distance rogue therapist one-ad feeding on the earth's molten core. Excessive inabilities pays the wages. Twits intercept the poem. Chemtrail theory after grad school. Loft living for genuine leather manuscript in a wicker basket. "5 days borrowed equipment. Power and ignorance come together to the rooftop barbecue, free cycling the urban rustic debate tactics for later. Post-avant enthusiasts are lined up on the sidewalk waiting for something to drop. Actual bankers collect real interest on your student loans. Cliché more vibrant than original expression. Information is cheap, meaning is trashed. Teddy Adorno signs the guest book whilst the Rheingold doth flow. This poem's called Gilded Doritos. Acme birdseed replaced with Acme iron pellets. Cap'n Crunch executed for, oops, all berries by PepsiCo tribunal. Consumer activists can suck an egg, pick a poison. Pseudo-dogs roam the red forest tasting metal. Understudy writes Chernobyl diaries for the B- movie deal. Real-life hamburglar high on bath salts? Don't talk to Kojak. Poem's social media updates. I realize it has another reference to Springsteen, but what do you want? I'm from Jersey. So. I'm actually a fan of Springsteen. So. All right. Letting it all hang out down at the speakeasy. Sexual identity Politico lugging manual typewriter up to the Driftwood bar. Professor of Springsteen studies on deep jingoism versus the sheer weirdness of the Mellencamp. Interest rates itself in self-flagellating two-way mirror. Shop steward, how much for that powdered wig in the window? It's not for sale. Triumph of the Economizer. This was originally written for a friend, and then I think when he read it, I don't know if he liked it too much, so then I took back that it was dedicated to him, but he probably knows who he is, so Triumph of the Economizer. Wind-up teeth chatterer, welcome to the poetry jungle gym of the central lowlands. Air scare quotes, transparent lyricist, off-key dubious lower hate shuffle, Netherlandish documentary hurting smile on cadaverous faces. Progression-free buggy ride society myth of the month. All-star English muffin pizza. Are they hailing its survival? Alright, I've got two more poems. This is a recovering trend, and I'm going to read it to Judah. Out of sinking into gentriverse, moving on up, meet funny money, boogie down broker who never forgets. Banner year zero drift to this place, lost illusions now, ask me how. Glittering instant prize, stale prince of Crown Heights, que lastima. I don't know what that means, but I like how it sounds. Grant fund enhancement, key Mr. Cotter's car, cue welcome back, law of jungle leap, leverage sucker system. Ghost of shortcomings referencing musical chairs, criminal dogs sell Gucci coin cultural currency, spending new sorry. Template of doom, head fakes identity, battles unworkable sincerity. Skinny jeans engender planet of gapes, occupies unknown dead. Fake ghost chaser, fussy curatorial detachment, monopoly, monocled night. Chopped Ritalin chic, consummate performance. Decadent high wire act, reclimb the invisible ladder. This is the last poem. Thank you, Joe and Chris and Mo and Zinc Bar Readings, Nuclear Zima Collective. Randians clutching their Etsy accounts, throwing I Ching on the L train, eating the pills and letting the world do the work. 3-card Monty burning a hole in the designer severance package. Genuine pity, didn't read the label. Genuine Lucky Charms. Prefer to have no credit rating for aesthetic reasons. Black light verifying membership. Blood splatter, bleached bright teeth. Trend piece millennials naming their kids after ancient Mayan lords. Robbed of all their minerals, the people come and go. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. That was a very satisfying reading. I'm so happy. What a way to close out 2012. So, a few things. One, que lástima means what a pity, so now you know it's perfect. Two is that, shit, I forgot two.
Come back to it.
It's two. I'll come back to it. Three, books. Books. There really are many more books in the back. And yeah, thank you all for coming out. Oh, I remember number two. If you didn't put money in the little white hat, please add some money to the little white hat. And thank you all for coming out. See you in 2013. When's the next reading? Do you know?
Oh, I was going to say the next reading.
Yeah, do
Next
it.
reading is in. The next reading is going to be January 20th. So we're. Yeah, you can say it right when I'm done, okay? It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. I have no idea what it's going to be. Sunday, July 20th, it's going to be Janice Grill and one other person whose name now also escapes me. Number
January.
two. January Jones. And we'll be reading with Janice Grill, who's going to be talking a bit about Robert Musil, who's an amazing Austrian writer from the early 20th century. She's one of the U.S.'s preeminent Musil scholars, and she's actually kind of one of the reasons I'm actually a writer. So anyway, it's going to be an interesting night, and you should come. What do you think, Aurora?
Bye. Good night.